Did you know that there's 3 ways to play?
There is. Match play. Oh.
Hey guys, welcome to another Lords of War Games and Hobbies video. I'm Chris, this is Jay.
What's up?
Who's back from Adepticon.
Back
Yay.
from Adepticon.
I don't have to do a solo video talking to myself, posing questions to myself and answering them.
Well, we make do with what we have here.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, I could have, I guess, done a live thing, but
Could have got you in
crazy.
on the Wendy's drive-through phone.
Oh, man. Yeah.
So today we want to talk about our videos this week are actually going to be kind of linked thematically, which is kind of cool. So one will cover one topic about sort of classic wargaming versus modern wargaming, and that bleeds into our topic in this video, which is going to be 3 ways to play. Why do we only ever hear about one of them?
Yep.
Why has one become the dominant way to play? And who's kind of guilty of creating that situation, or who has some of the blame to kind of take on that with. So what do you think? When you think of like open and narrative play, which are two of the 3 ways to play, what comes to mind?
Well, I think the first problem or thing that jumps at me is the open and narrative. I don't understand why they're different things.
That's
that
fair,
part
yeah.
I don't understand.
Yeah.
Because it's open play is supposed to be, I guess, you and your friend just like decide whatever you want. Maybe you use points, maybe you don't use points, and you just put models down and play. And I think narrative is the same thing, because you're already doing that. You're building a narrative that I'm going to use these models in this mission. So I think there's some confusion there that I think Games Workshop has, like, I don't know. They had a bit of a message early on. I remember when they started doing, was that, or it was early AOS?
It was like first edition, I think they had.
And then they started kind of making that a tagline across all their games.
Yeah.
But the real, so between that, so there's the problem one is I don't know why we have 2 of these things. And the second thing is that I guess that maybe it's just something harder to promote than it should be. Maybe it isn't. I don't know. But they really haven't made very much effort. And I think maybe they did at some point. They're going to argue that things like Dawnbringer's books, the early AOS rule books, End Times, all these products that are just loaded with story and special scenarios and things are supposed to be that thing, and that people just don't buy them. And that might be true to an extent, because I recall, at least anecdotal, or I remember here in the store, there's I think 3 or 4 fat AOS books that were released when the game launched.
Right.
And they just had story in them.
Tons of story, not a lot of rules.
There was, I don't think, any rules in them.
Yeah.
There was not really, maybe scenarios or something, but it was pretty light. And they did not sell very well.
No.
And their additional, or per edition, late edition campaign products also generally don't sell. They sell okay because they sometimes have really good rules, like the Dawnbringer's book with the orcs, which is basically like an Orc Warclans like 3.5 codex, because it made them really good, and to no one's surprise, they cleaned up at Adepticon. They won everything, singles and doubles, or 8 teams. But I know the friends of mine that own those books, they are not reading the stories. They're buying them
For the rules.
So I think maybe there's an argument to be made that maybe it's not a lack of trying, because they are trying to make books that are very narrative focused. But it seems like the purchasing is still built around how good a rule set is or something. And maybe the problem with that is maybe our rules shouldn't be printed in books. So because they're printed in books, people only want to buy the books with the good rules. It's kind of a weird system we're in.
Definitely. And let's say this, like, there's a publication effort, I will say, so that is distinct from other things I'm going to talk about. The publication effort is there. Like, every book that they sell generally has content for different ways to play. So, like, I'm thinking of, like, the Path to Glory stuff in the Age of Sigmar Battle Tomes. There's what's the 40k equivalent? Crusade. They have Crusade stuff. They did at least last edition. So there's a publication effort to give people ways to play, in a narrative way, in a non sort of like match play way. Where I start to feel like the disconnect comes, because like you said, there has been other efforts like the the God Beasts books and all those like, you know, original AOS books, which I think were an interesting concept.
Yeah.
You have like the Crusade publications for 40K, where they put out those like little packs. And then you have like the end of edition books. I feel like a lot of those examples are examples of like a good idea in a bad execution sometimes. And what I think about that, like those early AOS books, I think just they sucked because early AOS was a mess.
Yeah.
You know, like they were blowing things up and trying things, and there was not a lot of interest in terms of like buying those books because the game was like raw and new and people didn't know what it was.
Yeah. It's kind of bad timing.
The end of an edition, everybody knows what's happening, right? Everyone knows that we're moving into a new edition, and you're basically asking people to purchase something that's going to basically last a few months, maybe 6 months at the most, right?
That's a tall ask. Entirely their own fault. Yeah,
that's a tall order, I think.
Yeah.
And where I'll move this conversation into is, I think the biggest problem that these types of playing have is, while I think there are physical ways to do these things, and I think some of them have merit and are good, what's the zeitgeist around the hobby? What's all the focus on in terms of like what people see with their eyes?
Yeah, they see Twitch reports of people playing top tables, or even if it's just play on tabletop, or one of these channels that does high production value. They see top down angles and side angles and a live score on the side. Yeah, it's all like people, meta armies, discussions about meta things, tier lists and all that junk. It's who won LVO, why, and
I can't tell you the last time I saw a Warhammer community article about like, oh, look at this narrative campaign we're doing. You know, look at this thing. Like, it's all centered around points updates, war scroll updates, meta watch. It's a lot of one direction, I guess.
Well, what's interesting is they used to actually manage to do some interesting campaign stuff in their history, and I'm trying to think of why it succeeded. So probably one of the most famous ones in the last 20 years was Badab.
Yeah, the Badab War was huge.
And I remember that was probably like 4th or 5th or 6th, somewhere in the middle, in those middle editions. And I think it was good because instead of trying to do this open narrative and match, they only really just had one regular mode of play, which you could describe as matched, but it was just the way, this is how you play. There's just one mode.
Yeah.
And so then, because there was just one mode, they just let everything roll as it was, like we discussed in a previous video, whether it was like balanced or not, and it really didn't matter. And when they would do a Badab thing, if I recall, there was a book, or maybe it was White Dwarfs.
It was a Forge World book, yeah.
It was a Forge World book.
Yeah.
And then it was accompanied by a bunch of really cool models. And it was usable in regular play, if I recall. Like, it was. Yep. You know, all those characters. So I think the key is and they didn't release it in a weird window, because at those days we didn't really actually know when an edition was coming. So they could release it whenever, and it was good, because it didn't matter if it was late. No one knew what late or early was. We just knew editions could be 3, 4, 5, sometimes 6 years. I don't know. Like, 9th Ed Fantasy, I think, was 6 years or something. Like, it wasn't the 3-year cycle that we're in now. So you didn't have that problem of people being like, oh, the edition's ending, so we're going to stop.
Yeah.
And maybe because it was a Forge World publication, it lived in a weird outside of the bubble where it was like, well, this is a separate product. So I think you could do something like that. I think they need to get away from the end of edition cycle, which it's just too telling now. You just like,
it feels very automatic and predictable.
It's so predictable. It does, We had Gathering Storm, Psychic Awakening.
Yeah.
Well, we're in early 10th Ed, so nothing yet. But 2 years from now, it's probably. I think that's.
We've gone through 2 AOS cycles of that as well.
It was.
What was the one last edition? With like the Techless book, Bellicor.
I forget
what that series
Kragnos.
is called. Not End Times.
No, it wasn't End Times.
Yeah. Either way.
I don't know.
Broken something?
Maybe Broken Realms.
Realms, something like that. Yeah, and it was cool. It was cool. Like, they're always cool. Like, they give the company an opportunity to do things. Something I wish they did during the edition, which is release a book that has multiple things for multiple armies in it.
Yeah.
I actually used to love, say what you want about War Machine, but I actually used to love the way they used to release books. Because they would put out these books that would have usually like 5 or 6 different things for different armies in it. And I always thought that was awesome.
Yeah.
So I like that idea. I just don't think you should be backloading it into like
Yeah.
an edition when people are like, eh.
Yeah, I think also the way they've gone about keeping, so the consequence of uber balancing everything, or trying to keep on top and maintaining everything as a match play product the way they've been doing like an esport, is that you have to actually refresh the edition every 3 years, because it's already, as we've discussing about Age of Sigmar now, with this upcoming fourth, is the game reached a point of like too much complexity for a new player to easily jump in. So hence why, like, again, this is just like my anecdotal evidence based on Chris's observation last year and my observation this year at UpToCon. Like, the Age of Sigmar player base that attended was a bit smaller. It's like trending down little by little every year. Now everyone that was there was a good player. There were no bad players, I'll give you that. And they all kind of had been already. That's why they're there.
Yeah.
Whereas in previous years, when AOS was fresher and a little simpler, like there was 300-400 players coming. So, and it was that like people wanted to jump in because
And a lot more people doing the like pretty army stuff.
Yes.
Like the army painting stuff. It's like I think you're attracting the casual player a little bit more that's just in it for the painting and wants to play some games and stuff.
So I would say the quality of army painting like seemed to trend down, and the quality of player went up. But yeah, so you got a little bit more of the people that were there because they like the puzzle that is the game,
Sure,
rather than every other aspect. So yeah, you see it like if they don't tweak and balance things regularly, people get upset and the game seems to run into issues. So now they have to do this like kind of big refresh, which seems to be in line with what they did with 40k 10th, just to keep it from, I don't know, losing control of it or losing the player base because it's too hard. I actually, one of our friends who doesn't play AOS was there watching. I was watching my mates play in the team battle. I was just sitting on the edge of the table, it was the edge of the row, and one of the other guys with us, he sat down. He doesn't play AOS, and he was asking me questions. He wanted to play-by-play, and I was explaining. I'm like, well, now they have to deal with. They got to pick secondaries. He's like, okay, that makes sense. I'm like, he's like, why did that guy move there? I'm like, well, he's projecting how he's going to get the tertiary. He's like, there's 3. I was like, yeah, they had to pick tertiaries that you have to factor into your army list, and then see, this guy moved this model way in the corner, so now they'll never get it. And he's just like, his brain was starting to just lose like interest quickly because he's like, this is already.
I'm sorry I asked. Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
And then he was trying to follow like, what phase are we in? I'm like, no, this is actually all happening in our phase because there's like command points and you can do things in your turn, etc., or out of turn, and so all of that stuff. It was getting a little bit just over their head.
So, and I think back to like one of the consequences of this sort of like smattering Warhammer community being this like engine that's driving this forward. And this is what people are seeing, is you almost have this like self-fulfilling prophecy of all these things falling in line. So if that's the thing that's being presented all the time, what are YouTubers going to talk about?
Yeah.
So you see like battle reports and just like general content on the web being more gaming focused. Not that there isn't like painting videos and all that stuff. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about people playing games. What types of games are they playing? And how it's being presented. And then you have stores like us even who... we're just kind of like almost like falling in line, I guess is what you could say.
Yeah.
And let's be real.
We have to go where the money is sometimes.
You got to go where the money is, but you also, what's easy sometimes isn't always what's best, but it's what happens because, a lot of these businesses are small. There's only a couple of us usually in most of these businesses. And the idea of running something like a narrative campaign or something that requires a lot more effort and kind of organization versus just putting a tournament in or a league up and just like updating your spreadsheet every week. Those things have a different,
no, it's true.
One's easier than the other, right?
You can just, the leagues are really simple. You're just like, we're going to play this many rounds. It's, use your handbook or chapter approved or whatever it is, Leviathan deck, and come play your games and give me a result. Like it's funny, in our history here, we have run or tried to run narrative projects in the past, and it's not easy. It's a lot of work to get to write up the narrative, to make it worth, to convince people to come and spend a day or 2 days doing these games that have like very story driven, because it's not for everyone either. And like it isn't easy, and it doesn't help that maybe we don't get enough tools, or maybe because Games Workshop doesn't push it enough, there's not enough people coming in and asking for it. which is unfortunate. Actually, I had another thought while you were just going on about even our painting has gotten match play with things like slap chop, and
Yeah, no,
it's all about crushing out things quickly.
oil washes, airbrushing. Yeah.
Airbrushing, dry brush, slap chop. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what's going on with the. Do people do open or narrative at all? That's a good question.
Yeah, that's.
I'm sure there are people. That
Or
do.
have you thought about it? Like, is there a long desire in your heart to do something like this? Like, I remember being younger, and for some reason, the idea of playing a campaign was always just this like amazing fantasy.
Yeah.
And it's just something you always wanted to do, and like with your buddies, and I don't know if it's just like. For some reason, we've been hobbying together for like 2 decades, and I don't know that we've ever really successfully pulled off doing a campaign with our hobby group,
Yeah.
like a proper one.
No, not really.
And that's kind of funny when you think about it, right? Like, why? Like, is it that we lack the tools? Is it that we're like pushing uphill against something that's like invisible, but like is there? I don't know. I don't know what it is.
We've had some really fun, purely narrative / open mega battles.
Sure, definitely. That's definitely what
We've definitely done a few of those. But like really detailed map campaigns and stuff. I don't know. Maybe because it's a lot of work.
Definitely, yeah.
Or just as we've gotten older, maybe it's like maybe with the limited time, you kind of just focus on one, because then changing your army isn't as easy, and people aren't as willing to just buy new things. That's the other thing.
Yeah. People
that like doing campaigns like the idea. It gives them an opportunity to buy another new thing just for that. So, but going full circle for a moment, I'm trying to think back of like famous Games Workshop other than Badab, where it was like. There's another one I remember in the late 90s, early 2000s, where the Games Workshop, I think it was called the Albion campaign. It was a Warhammer.
Oh yeah,
campaign.
the Albion, yeah, yep.
And the store had us just playing games, and results were being like thrown into the ether. They were technically grabbing results and sending them in, and then Games Workshop. Who cares what they did with the results? They could have written whatever they wanted.
Yeah, exactly.
But we all believed, like, well, no, the results are going in, No, the elves won today, I want to put that in that bucket and make sure. And we used to care about that stuff a lot.
Yeah.
And then they would publish, like, a white dwarf or something that had, like, these are new items and special things that, like, these were the, things, treasures and new items and abilities that everyone got at the end of the campaign that they got to use in their games. And I think they made them... I think they just said use them in your games. I think they were technically legal. I don't remember, but it was very fun to play, thinking that you were contributing to something bigger. I think there was another one after. There was another one. There was Illustria. There was Nemesis Crown.
It was Armageddon for
Armageddon.
That was one of my favorites.
Was a big one.
Armageddon was really
and
cool.
They weren't. I think they were cool because Games Workshop did them. They were free. Basically free to play.
Yeah.
Because there was like stores would do little incentives where you bought X or Y. Maybe that got you. I think with Nemesis Crown there was like a card you filled out. If you filled out the card, you bought all the 6 things you needed to buy on there. Plus you like painted something. And you got that one was one of the best ones I remember. And you got a $40 credit or something, which is effectively a free box of dudes at the time. Now I understand why they don't do that now, but that was very memorable. So I think maybe if they did that more, made it really accessible and gave players a fun incentive and stores a fun incentive to push towards doing those. Maybe they don't really send stores fun packs, if whatever you want to call them, event packs. It's all, if you want one, it costs money, and then when you do get it, like it costs us money, and then when we do get it, it's usually very lackluster. It's like there's nothing really exclusive in it. They don't really send great, special models or tokens. It's I don't know. I think they could definitely make it make it worthwhile if they wanted to. They have the resources. But.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought. Yeah. My brain's kind of going now, like, oh, what would I like to see?
Yeah, right. Right.
So, what's your brain doing? What are you thinking? Like, what have you been in the hobby as long as us, or seen things like that? Did you experience those? What would you like to see from a campaign system, or something that's not just match play, something that's like something extra to get you excited about playing in a fun and new, exciting way? What would that look like? Comment below. You can ask us these questions on Patreon if you're one of our members, and you can even basically get us to do a video about it. And ask those questions because we are putting together an FAQ, and we're going to do an episode on that at some point in the future. Like and subscribe; it helps us out a ton. And until next time, guys, take care. Thanks for watching.
Bye.